Morning. Good morning, Head Start. I hope everyone is doing well on this bright, sunny day in Kentucky. I hope everyone can hear me. Jeff, can you hear me okay?
I can, absolutely.
Excellent. Well, I'd like to welcome everyone to the next session in our continuing webinar series brought to you by the Kentucky Head Start Association. Today, we are joined by our good friend, Jeff Kortes. Many of you might remember Jeff. He has been with us on a couple of occasions before and has a ton of great information related to employee recruitment and employee retention. We know right now in the Head Start world, those are some critical questions for you as Head Start leaders, certainly as you're facing things during COVID-19 and other employee challenges that may be coming to your programs. So having said that, a couple of housekeeping options before we begin. First, if you have a question, please raise your hand or type it in the chat. I think everyone at this point is familiar with Zoom and the ability to raise your hand. I will be monitoring that throughout. And if you have any questions, we will go ahead and try and answer them as quickly as possible. The second thing I will tell you is that this webinar is being recorded. So please make sure that anything that you write, anything that you do is appropriate, and make sure that you're muted and so on and so forth. Given that this is a webinar, the speaker cannot hear you and the speaker cannot see you. So you will be reliant upon the chat function as well as raising your hand. So with that, let me introduce Jeff. Jeff has over 30 years in human resources, from working in HR to building a highly successful recruiting and consulting firm. He has held HR leadership roles with organizations such as ConAgra, Midas International, and SPX Corporation in both plant and corporate settings. His book, Give Your Employees Crap and 7 Other Secrets to Employee Retention, which of course is the title of our session today, is used in companies as a guide to assist them in developing proactive retention strategies. He's been married to his wife, Nancy, for over 30 years and has 3 adult children. He's an avid high school wrestling fan and CrossFit participant. When not working as a headhunter, Jeff consults and speaks on employee retention around the country. So after all, who better to help you keep your talent than someone whose job it is to steal your talent? So Jeff, we are thrilled to have you with us this morning, and I know that you're going to be able to share a variety of great strategies with our folks. So I'm going to turn it over to you and we will get started.
Thanks very much, John. I appreciate it. One of the things I will tell you is I want you to type in things into the chat box because I try to make, even though this is a virtual presentation, I try to make it as much like we're in person as possible. So granted, I can't ask you questions that you can shout back to me, but I can ask questions that you can respond in the chat box. My goal today is to help you drive your employee turnover down. And I talked crap before, caring, respect, appreciation, praise, when I did my creating a culture of crap program. We're going to touch on some of those elements because crap, caring, respect, appreciation, and praise is the linchpin that drives employee retention in your organization. If you are not giving your employees crap, you will not retain people. And we're going to talk about that. You see my magnificent block tower. I can't call it a Jenga tower because I'll get sued, but I have the 8 elements. The second one is actually the crap, and we're going to talk about that a little bit, but we're going to go through the other 7 key elements. And I want you to notice I got the Jenga tower because as we go through, I'm going to pull out blocks. And what you're going to see is as I pull out more and more blocks, as if you missed a key element in employee retention, it's going to weaken the tower. And the more I pull out and the more you would miss, the greater the likelihood that the tower is going to fall. And unfortunately, when the tower falls, it falls on you because you're the ones that bear the brunt of not doing these 8 things that drive employee retention. You have a handout that coincides with the color of the blocks. Take your notes there. You also should have a handout on our Great Boss checklist because I go through this in virtually every webinar I do because there are 34 traits that people look for in a great boss. And a great boss or a great leader is really what drives this entire process. So let's start out. I want you to think about this question. If you could do one thing, just one thing, and lower your turnover by 20%, would you do it? Something to think about. Another question I ask is, if you could do two things and lower your turnover by 50%, would you do it? Of course you would. My last question is, if you could learn a process and the 8 secret elements that I've found over the years that will drive employee retention in your organization, would you do it? Absolutely. You would not think about not doing it, not think about not doing it. But if you do all of these things, and you're gonna go through this and you say, Jeff, this is simple things. Well, they're not simple, they're fundamental. And putting it all together is the real key, because if you can do that, if you can put all these elements together, which is where most organizations struggle, is if you put it all together. I've seen organizations lower their turnover by anywhere from 40 to 80%. The key is when you get out of this session, you have got to start applying these things and working on a strategy to drive employee retention in your organization. So with that, let's get started. Let's talk about the first block. The first block is hire for fit. Hire for fit. I'm going to also read, I'm going to give you 8 comments that were made to me by people who I was attempting to recruit out of an organization. And these are the comments that they made to me, real life comments that coincide with each one of the blocks that we're going to see as we go through CRAP and the 7 secrets. In this particular case, the individual I was recruiting out of the organization said to me, you know, Jeff, when they hired me, they said it was a decisive organization. He says, yeah, right. He says, it takes forever to get anything done and for them to make any decisions. So this was a very aggressive individual who came from a very high tempo organization. And he moved into an organization that was much slower tempo, was very deliberative in their thought process. And they didn't get that in the interview process. And as a result, what happened was within 6 months, he was looking to move because he was going crazy, because he was not a good fit. So as I like to tell people, don't be a twit, hire for fit. Now, my daughter, who is now 33, when she was going through grad school, I made the mistake of taking her to the mall. And we're going through Macy's, and we came in the one entrance, and off to the left is the shoe aisle. And as we're walking in, my daughter looks over and she sees this pair of black stiletto heels. And man, she is over there in a shot. She grabs these things and she says to me, Dad, check these out. Aren't these hot? And before I can even answer, she's waving at the clerk and saying, hey, can you have these in a size 7? Clerk looks at the machine and says, yes, we do, miss. Let me go get them from the back. Brings the shoes out. My daughter tries one on, checks herself out in the mirror, and she says, wow, she says, hey, these look pretty good, don't they? Yeah, I guess. So then she puts the other one on. And then she kind of prances back and forth in front of the mirror. And she is liking what she's seeing. And then she says to me, and I knew I was in trouble, she says, Daddy, and here it comes. She says, I really can't afford these shoes. She says, I'm in grad school, and I'm working part-time, but not making a lot of money. She says, will you buy them for me? Well, of course, I'm a soft touch because I've got an older son and a younger son, and my daughter is stuck in the middle between them, and she's got me wrapped around her little finger. So like any dad, I reach for my wallet, take out my credit card, and hand it to the clerk. Clerk rings it up, and then I look at the receipt. Holy man, $129 later, my daughter has her pair of black stiletto heels from Steve Madden. For those of you guys in the audience, we're not talking about John Madden, the football coach. It's Steve Madden, the designer. Well, she's got her black stilettos from Steve Madden because she said, Dad, oh, these will look incredible with my clubbing dress. You know, she says, that was her excuse to get me to buy into this. So anyway, so that Saturday, she's going out to hit the top. Got her black clubbing dress on, has her black stilettos on. She says, well, Dad, what do you think? I said, well, yeah, they look great. You know, I'm thinking, okay, maybe, you know, it cost me $129, but I made a good investment. Well, I'm in bed by the time she comes home. So, and we didn't talk about how her evening was or anything like that. Well, the next Saturday, she's heading out again. Got her black clubbing dress on. Different pair of shoes. And I look at her and I say, Allie, where are those $129 shoes that I bought for you? Well, now it's Dad. She said, oh, Dad, she said, I got to tell you. She says, you know, I was standing by the bar and we're just dancing. She says, you know, they really hurt my feet. They, you know, they kind of pinch and everything like that. She says, I think I'm a size 7.5 and not a 7. So what do you think happens to the shoes? They sit in the closet. Eventually, they probably went to Goodwill or Salvation Army or somewhere. I don't know what became of the shoes. But what I'm trying to give you an idea is people are like a foot. The organization is like a shoe. You have to fit into the shoe. A candidate has to fit into that shoe, or otherwise it just doesn't work. And what will happen is you might hire somebody, and usually it takes anywhere from 3 to 6 months before you can see something that somebody is not a fit. And then as a result, you may end up exiting them from an organization, or as time goes on, just run into problems, because fit is the most important element in whether or not someone is successful in an organization. Fit. So that's why I tell people you have to hire for fit. What happens is we oftentimes use a very imperfect process for finding people. And that is simply just doing the interview. Well, one of the things that I recommend is if you are hiring people, that you use psychometric testing instruments, or as a lot of people call them, personality tests. Psychometric testing instruments are science applied to hiring. And what they will do is they will give you a good indicator as to where that person's head at. What's their personality like? And is that personality consistent with what you're looking for in the organization? And when I have people take a psychometric testing instrument, and virtually all of my clients that I recruit for use psychometric testing instruments of some sort, because it's a way of stripping away the veneer and really seeing where is this person's head at. And that's the key, in my opinion, because if their value systems align with the value systems of the organization, you are going to have a good fit. The other thing I do is after they take the psychometric testing instrument, I get the results. If there's something I have a question about, it gives me the opportunity to use that tool to laser in with my questions so that I can figure out, you know, am I missing something or not? I will take the psychometric testing instrument, I will slide it across the table to the individual, and I will ask them, take a minute to read this. How accurate is it? Is it 80? Is it 85? Is it 95% accurate? And where it's not accurate, tell me where you think it's not accurate, and we're going to talk about that. Well, what they do is they look at the psychometric testing instruments, and these things have gotten so sophisticated. They're now into what they call 5th generation psychometric testing instruments. I mean, they are scary accurate. And most people will come back to me and say, wow, This is me. And then we talk about where they think it's not them. So we get not only the instrument, but we get an affirmation from the person if this thing is accurate. So they just validated for me that this is really, truly who they are. And that's one way to make sure that I'm getting that right fit. The other piece is your interview process. You've seen how I use the psychometric testing instrument as part of my interview process. But one of the things from an interviewing perspective, I would tell any organizations, and when I do my program called Recruit to Win, I tell my audiences, you have to have a minimum of 10 questions ready. Because what happens is after you're through your questions, if you run out of questions during the interview, then you start to talk. And when you're not talking, you're not gathering information from the individual to determine if they are a good fit for your organization. And remember, fit is 50% of the person's success on a job. Unfortunately, we get obsessed with looking at skills. Skills are important, but remember, 50% of their success on the job is fit. The last thing I will tell you about is in your interview, all too often, we're very, very serious in our interview process. As you probably remember from the Culture of Crap program, I was interrogator in the United States Army. When people say, well, what's your interview style? And they all think that I'm going to be this hardcore poker playing sort of interviewer, and I'm not. I'm really kind of a good old boy when I interview. I'm relaxed. I ask my questions. I try to get the candidate to relax, because if the candidate relaxes, they start telling me about how they tick, basically. What's their value system? What do they think? Do they have a work ethic? All those factors that go into success on the job. So I combine a relaxed candidate with my psychometric testing instrument and my interview process in order to get a real good feel for whether or not a person is a good fit for my position. Because if you start using these three things I've talked about, you will see a 20% drop in your turnover in your organization. Guaranteed, absolutely guarantee this, because you've taken your front end of your process and made it much more sophisticated than it probably is at this point. With that as the first block, I want to give you an opportunity to ask some questions. If you have questions, type them into the chat box, because I'm going to give you that opportunity after each particular element in the 7 secrets. Normally, I would have my producer Randy here, but he's off giving a customer service seminar today. So I'm on my own. What can I say? Go ahead, come on. I want to see some questions coming up or thoughts. Would Myers-Briggs works as one of those tests? My understanding is you're on the right track with something like a Myers-Briggs. Myers-Briggs, I don't believe is approved for pre-employment. That's that's my understanding. But instruments like that are the types of instruments. You are absolutely on the right track. Other questions? I will tell you, there are hundreds of instruments out there. You can go online, you can research them, or if you have questions, give me a call, because I have a colleague that all he specializes in is psychometric testing instrument. And based on your organization, he can give you some recommendations as to what might be the best options for you. But as I tell people, pun intended, you are crazy if you don't use a psychometric testing instrument. All right, we're going to move on. The next block is give your employees crap. We talked about some of the crap principles, but the first thing is caring. And I tell people, you have to be there for your people, and you have to be available. I told an example, giving you an example of my dad, who is now a recovering alcoholic, but I will give you another example of where being there for your employees really matters. myself and the plant manager, we were walking through the shop. The lead man on one of the welding lines was real quiet that day, and he's normally not like that. And we said to him, Roger, are you okay? And he says, he says, things aren't going good. He says, at home, he says, I think my wife and I are going to end up with a divorce. And I said to him, well, Roger, we have an EAP. Why don't you come up to my office? Did the same thing as the HR director did with my dad. I let Roger make the call. He made the call. And then we never heard anything else besides that. That was the end of it. Well, this plant ended up being shut down about 5 years later. People scattered to the four winds. And another 10 years later than that, the plant manager, he landed a job as a vice president of operations in another organization. And as he starts walking, and they come out with, they give the organizational announcement. As he starts walking through the shop for the first time, lo and behold, there's Roger. And Roger comes up to him and he says, Rick, do you remember me? And he says, absolutely, Roger. How are you doing? And he says, well, he says, you know what? He says, I'm really looking forward to introducing you to the guys, because he said, I remember what you and Jeff did for me. He says, my wife and I are still married, kept my family intact. And he says, I can't thank you enough. That's golden, because Roger's out there and he's talking to all the guys, and he introduces Rick to all the guys, and he's saying, hey, Rick's the sort of guy that we need here. He's going to be a great leader. So first day on the job, a vice president, when a lot of people are very skeptical, Roger gives him this glowing endorsement. That is priceless. So again, remember, I've told you before, if you do not have an employee assistance program, you need to get one. The other thing is you got to listen to your people. You got to be there for them. And again, you got to listen intently so that is there an issue here? How can you help them without being a counselor? You're a leader, not a counselor. But how can you funnel them to resources that they need? Another thing is the respect. I talked about this before. I'm not going to have you go through this checklist, but micromanaging is one of the biggest signs of disrespect that you can show towards your people, because it sends the message that you do not trust them. From an appreciation perspective, what I find is I get candidates all the time that say to me, you know what? I don't feel appreciated by my boss. I don't want to stay. And that's the trigger that gets them talking to me and telling them about my clients. And so, as I tell people, I'm a recruiter, and I'm fishing. I'm fishing. When somebody makes a comment like that, boom, I set the hook and I reel that person in, because if they are not appreciated, they are not going to want to stick around. Scary stat for you, and I think I used this one before. 76% of the millennials say they would think about quitting their job if they didn't feel appreciated. So now I'm going to ask you a question, and I know I talked about this. What is the best way to find out things that you can show appreciation to your people? I want to see if anybody gets it. Type it into the chat box. What is the way that you can change your mindset to find things to appreciate your people? Come on, type it into the chat box. Let's see who gets it first. Come on, I'm hurt. You need to remember this one from the past. You want to change your mind. Let me see. From Heidi, positivity and appreciation, but how do you change your mind to a positivity approach? Thanks for typing that in, Heidi. Maybe this will get other people off the bench and into the game. What sort of mindset do you got to have in order to find things to help people, to be able to show people appreciation? What are those things? You have to change your mindset. Instead of trying to catch people doing things wrong, you want to catch them doing things right. Intentionally look for the positive. Absolutely. Michelle, you got it. Yeah, I mean, that's exactly it. Because we tend to look for negative things. We tend to look for negative things. Let's go out there and find people doing things right, because your people do more things right than they do wrong. Otherwise, your organization wouldn't be successful. It wouldn't be in existence if your people didn't do more positive things than they do things that are wrong. So again, you have to catch people doing things right, and then you have to give them these positive affirmations. Remember, a highly successful organization, people hear 5 positive things for every 1 negative. 5-to-1 ratio. So you have to be out there looking for things. And I'm not talking about a big deal. We're talking about, if someone has a positive interaction with one of the kids, you say to them, hey, I love the way you handle that. Nice job. Not some big gushing thing. That's praise. My whole thing is you catch somebody doing things right, you say, hey, nice job. Looks good. Keep up the good work. Just a little thing to reinforce that what they did is what they should be doing. Because if you reinforce the things they're doing right, they're going to do more of those things. And they're going to do more things right than they're going to do wrong. The last thing is praise. Praise is positive affirmation on steroids. Okay, it's when somebody hits it out of the park. You make a big deal out of it. From Teresa, missed that one. Okay, when giving feedback, oh no, this is one from Audra. When giving feedback where something needs to be addressed, I do positive sandwich. Yeah, and a positive sandwich is you tell them something positive, then you might tell them something that is that they need to work on, but then you finish with a positive. Great way to do that. I've done that. I will say I will tend to break them apart in that I see somebody doing something right, but then I always make it a point to say, that was great, but you could really take that to the next level. I'm using but, the great erasers say, however, if you want to take that to the next level, think about doing it this way. Again, because as much as you're telling them that they're doing something right, you don't want to totally negate it by bringing up the negative. That's the one area where I tend to get concerned. Any other thoughts, questions in regards to caring, respect, appreciation, and praise? If you've got them, type them in. Okay, we're moving on to the next block. Comment that I heard from this individual. We got one from Ashley. It's not always about work. Ashley, explain that a little bit for me. Ashley's raised her hand. Yeah. Oh, okay. I got it. Yeah. And as I'm reading through it, yeah, where they've traveled, what they've done, what they do on the weekend, all that sort of thing. Those are things that you get to know people. She says something as simple as how was the weekend? I mean, I had one leader I worked with. This guy, he actually used to stand by the time clock before the weekend, not to catch people to see who's lining up early. What he used to do is he would thank his people for their contribution that week. He'd say, I appreciate everything everybody's done. I want to thank you, and I'm looking forward to seeing you on Monday. Have a safe and enjoyable weekend. Powerful stuff. Powerful stuff. And we're going to talk a little bit about knowing more about people when we get into the red block as well. Yeah, relationship developing. How are you? All that's absolutely, because talk about the fact that when you're talking with people, you're developing that relationship that builds trust, and trust builds loyalty. And people don't quit someone they're loyal to. They quit nameless, faceless organizations. So if you want to add that personality into this, because again, it shows that you care. If you're just asking these questions because I said to do it, well, then it rings pretty hollow, and people know that. So, as a leader, you really truly have to care about your people. You don't have to, I will say this, you don't necessarily have to like them, but you have to care about them. That's hugely important. All right, we're going to move on to the third block. The third block, the comment that the person made to me was, I'm tired of working for less than someone that does half as much as I do. This block stands for pay and benefits, but we'll address the pay side of it first. I recognize that you folks are in a bind in that you've got a limited ability to do things with pay. So what I tell organizations, and in this case, this was a young guy, and he was working in a garden center. It happens that young guy was my youngest son. And he was so frustrated because he was busting it, and people were doing a lot less, and they were getting paid more than him. So what happens if you don't address that issue? And we're going to talk about that a little bit more with the black block. If you don't address that issue, your top performers, your Clydesdales, as I like to call them, your Clydesdales get frustrated because they might be sitting in a cube, or they might see other people, in the classroom, and the people aren't necessarily performing, or they're on their phone, or they're looking at Facebook, all these, talking with their boy or girlfriend or spouse, all these things, and the Clydesdale is looking and saying, "What's with this person?" And I'm busting it, and I'm making less than them. So one of the things that I tell people is, and a lot of people disagree with me, but the best way to maintain and keep your top performers is to have a fair system. And I will tell you, fair is not necessarily equal, because in a fair system, top performers should get paid more than bottom performers. And I know that goes against the grain of what a lot of people are talking about today, but I will tell you, if you do that, you will find your Clydesdales appreciate it. And the other thing is if you don't address it, it's going to kill your credibility with your people. They're going to look at you and they're going to say, wow, I'll pick on Ashley because she's put a few things in Ashley, she doesn't, she's either clueless. They're thinking when Ashley doesn't address the problem, they're saying, wow, Ashley's clueless. Or they're thinking Ashley just doesn't care. And if Ashley doesn't care, why should I care? And then you'll see your Clydesdale's performance start to drop down to the lower performance of other people. And that's where it can be dangerous. Or they get so frustrated, as was the case with my son, he started looking for another job. And as soon as he found another job, he was gone. Because people look at internal equity and say, how does my performance compare to the performance of other people in the organization? Because they might say, they're aware of external equity, and they're looking at that and they're saying, okay, am I paid fairly relative to the market? But the thing that really drives them crazy is watching somebody day in and day out who they know is making more money than them and is skating by. That drives people crazy, and that will drive people out of the organization. The other thing I would tell you relative to pay, one of the things about pay that is very important to people is that pay and performance appraisals have to be done within the timeline that you've committed to do them. If the due date is April 1st, The last thing you want to be doing is on, May 15th, coming to them and saying, well, here's your performance review. It's the last thing you want to do. You should be before April 1st, because what happens is if you're not there before April 1st and you've committed to that, they're saying, this person doesn't care about me. They committed to this and they're not living up to their commitments. So, you got to walk the talk. And that's hugely important, because that's one of the things that everybody can control. Everyone can control it. And as I tell people, when you're giving out raises, and again, I don't know what the constraints are in your organization, but when you're giving out raises and you give more to the top performer and the bottom performer for some reason hears about it and comes into your office and says, hey, how come Mary got more of an increase than I did? Well, you got to say, well, let me explain it to you. Mary's doing this and this and this that you're not doing. If you want to get a bigger increase next time, you got to start working on those things and doing those things. It's a great opportunity to have a constructive dialogue with somebody who is less than a top performer. So that's the financial side. Let's talk about the benefits side. And I'm not going to get into, benefits analysis and any of that. What I will tell you, one of the biggest benefits that you can offer your people is flexibility. If you can offer your people flexibility, because our lives are getting more and more and more busy, if you can offer your people flexibility to help them deal with their lives and things like that, people of every generation appreciate that. It's huge. So I recommend that every organization form a flexibility task force and get a cross section of people from the organization and ask them, hey, how could we be more flexible? Got a question here in the chat box. Put it up there again. It disappeared quickly. If you could. It's not showing. Sorry, I missed that.
Let's see. Jeff, it says from Teresa Justice, what can you do if an organization will not allow bonuses or raises due to merit?
So that means that everybody is getting the same amount of increases. Am I interpreting that correctly, John?
I don't know if it's suggesting that. It's simply saying that they're not. Yes. So Teresa says yes, but that's what
okay. Well, in that case, and I work with a lot of organizations that are like that. And what you do then is, frankly, you can focus on the flexibility side. It's one element that you don't have control over. It is what it is. Don't worry about it. That means that you've got to focus on the other elements even more, because that's one tool that you don't have in your toolbox. That's the thing I tell people relative to pay, because I hear that a lot. Well, you just don't have that arrow in your quiver. So, but you do have flexibility. In most cases, you have flexibility. Ask your people, hey, if people are complaining about schedules, for instance, and you say to them, well, how can we work through this? Ask your people. I've worked in environments where we've had that situation go on, and the team figured out how we could be more flexible and still run the organization. Again, it's not about just giving carte blanche. The caveat is, what can we do to be more flexible and still run the organization efficiently? You will be surprised some of the great ideas that you come up with. And the one example I'll use in a setting that we had, the people recommended we go to, instead of 5 8-hour days, go to 4 10-hour days. People loved it. And it was an idea from the people. And what happened is we thought about going back to 5 8s. Our people wouldn't have it because they said, hey, it's 4 10s is working and whatnot, but they loved it so much. And it was a big attraction tool from a standpoint of recruiting as well. So form that flexibility task force. That's something that every organization can do. And it's not some big thing. You get a bunch of people together and you start brainstorming and say, hey, what can we do to be more flexible? Give it a try. I will tell you, it is a huge benefit. And also, it sends the message to your people that you feel confident enough in them to bring them in to get their ideas. You know, that's a respect issue as well. So that's part of the craft component. Other questions before I move on to the next element in the triangle, or in the block tower. I'll hold for a few minutes for a minute and for questions. Okay, with that, I will move on. The next block, black block, is deal with your non-performers. In some ways, this addresses Teresa's issue. If you've got non-performers and you have to pay them, you have to pay everybody, you're paying everybody the same. Well, you need to bring those non-performers in, sit them down and say, hey, look, you need to change your behavior. We need you to do these things. And if you don't, we're going to have to take some sort of action. And then if they don't respond, they don't start to do the things that they're supposed to be doing, then you take them through your process. And if necessary, and this is the retention guy saying this, if they're not doing what they're supposed to do, you sit them down, you retrain them, whatever needs to be done. If they don't respond, then you will need to exit people from the organization. And maybe that sounds harsh, but the reality is, if you do not do that, as I said before, your people are going to look at you and say, you know what? Oh, again, Ashley, I remember this. Ashley, you're clueless, or you don't care. In which case it destroys your credibility, and your credibility as a leader is huge from a standpoint of employee retention. Because this way, if you, and I'll talk a little bit about it when I get into the next block, which is communication. Your credibility as a leader is huge from an employee retention perspective. But you have to deal with those non-performers. That's just the way it is. Because if you don't, it's going to destroy your credibility. Not going to belabor that point. Questions in regards to the issue of dealing with non-performers? Anybody have any questions? Okay, moving right along. Next block, fifth block, is communication. Person that I was recruiting said they told us there were going to be some changes in how the business is structured, and then all communication stopped. I'm not sure of my future here. The more you communicate with people, it sends a message that you respect them. You respect them enough to share information with them and to keep them informed as to what is going on. My goal for you, when you think about communication, is to think about, you want to shut down the grapevine. Your goal is to shut down the grapevine, because as we all know, the grapevine is always positive. Hey, the grapevine's never positive. So your goal, if you can, you'll know when you're successful when the grapevine really starts to shrink. It might stay. I've never seen an organization where the grapevine has never existed, but it's so minimal that it's not disruptive to the organization. The best way I know of to deal with the issue of communication is you have to have communication, has to be multi-layered. It has to come from senior leadership, directors, managers, supervisors, all various layers. Everyone has to be saying the same thing. If you are a manager and you don't, when something comes down from the top, if you do not support it, you look bad because people know that it's come from the top. Okay. You got to get behind it. You got to support it. Hopefully there will have been some discussion that went on before where you have the opportunity to express your concerns or whatever. But when it comes down from the top, you have got to support it. And if you're a leader in the organization that's listening to this, and you hear about people who are at that first line level, who are saying things that are contradictory to something that's come down from the top, you need to bring that person in. You need to have a talk with them, because what they're doing is they're undercutting things, and it's making the organization look like it doesn't know what it's doing. So everybody has to be saying the same thing, and it's got to be consistent. The other thing is it's got to be ongoing. Your communication just can't be one thing now and one thing then and whatever. You need to have consistent, ongoing, and honest communication. That's the key. Consistent, ongoing, and honest communication. Ongoing in that you need to come up with, and this is another one, the organizations I tend to work with have strategic communication plans. And what they do is, and when I say strategic, everybody thinks, oh, wow, it's going to be some big, huge thing. Most of the organizations I work with, they sit down and say, okay, how are we going to communicate with our people? Is it going to be town hall meetings every quarter? Is it going to be department meetings once a week? Is it going to be one-on-ones, talking to people every day? Setting that expectation, whatever it is, and putting it down. These are the things we're going to do. We're going to do this. 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 And if you have them in writing, and I'm not talking some big document, I'm talking, I've got organizations that do one-pagers, a one-pager. Do this, do this, do this, do this. And then once they have that down, they start doing those things, and it becomes automatic. And that way, people start to realize that we're going to have a town hall meeting. I can bring something up at the town hall meeting. That's hugely important. So you know, it's got to be open, it's got to be ongoing, and it has to be honest. Okay, that's the real key in this situation. From a standpoint of who's doing the communicating, that's the other piece. Okay, you've got the various methods that you're going to communicate. Then you've got to look at who's doing the communicating. Okay, might be senior leadership, might be a supervisor in a weekly meeting. It might be a supervisor or manager adopts a philosophy of walking around every day to catch people doing things right. So you do those things. So it's the people as well as your process. And I'll give you a good example. I was working in an organization down in North Carolina, and what happened was we changed some processes from a safety perspective. And I sent out a big announcement, and I'm walking through the plant 2 days after the announcement. And there is this guy, and he's doing exactly the opposite of what I said we need to do. Well, I went up to him and I said, hey, you know, what's going on? Didn't you read the notice? And the guy actually had the audacity to say to me, he says, well, he says, every time I see anything from HR, I automatically ignore it. Wow. After he and I had a come to Jesus meeting, I found out that the other aspect of what was supposed to happen was the supervisors were also supposed to review this with all their people. This supervisor hadn't. So I went to the supervisor and said, hey, what's going on? You know, Marshall, I said that everybody was supposed to do this. He said, you know, whatever. I said, no. I said, it's unacceptable. You were told that this needs to occur, and you didn't follow through. As a result, one of your people was still doing the thing that was unsafe and that we needed to change. So he and I had to come to Jesus meeting, and we didn't have that problem going forward. But the reason I use this as an example is, here's an example where if a supervisor would have pass the information on. He may not like HR, but he's probably going to listen to his supervisor. Or someone at senior management says something and they don't believe it, but then the managers and the first line supervisors are all supporting it. Greater likelihood that their people will fall in line and do what's said, do what's needed to be done. And that's the key, because some people listen to certain people in the organization. Some people listen to certain media. They might ignore an email, but when it comes up at the department meeting and it's done in person, they might not. So by having multiple people involved and having multiple media of communicating, you pretty much cover the waterfront. And by doing so, things don't slip between the cracks. And what happens then is you see the grapevine start to shrink and less disruptive things coming out of the grapevine. And that's what you're really after. You want to shut down that grapevine. And if you can shut down that grapevine, you know you are on the right track. Questions? The example I will give with communication, the guy that said this to me, we pulled him out of the organization. He had been there 6 months. He was what they call a transmission engineer. These people who work on, overhead transmission lines. Very difficult to find. He'd only been there 6 months. They paid for his relocation, about $10,000. They paid a recruiter $15,000 to hire this guy. So they already had $25,000 just invested there. And when I pulled them out of the organization, they had to go and hire somebody again to recruit somebody else. So this move cost them probably $40,000 with one person. Not to say all the turmoil as a result of what was going on in the organization. The last thing I want to mention in regards to communication is fear. You shut down the grapevine, you eliminate fear. In this case, people started to get nervous about what was going on in the organization. Fear will drive people out of an organization, because when they're afraid, what happens is they go to an organization that's more stable. So by taking that fear element out, again, it's another thing that you do that helps you to retain people in an optimal manner. Questions about communication? Come on, somebody type in something. Either that, I'm doing such a fantastic job, or you're falling asleep. It's one of those two things. Super job. Great stuff here. All right, Ashley, I'll stop picking on you, I promise. How do you handle the issue when the person at the top is the problem with the communication? Well, that's one of those difficult conversations that you have to have. You have to go to the person and say, look, well, blame me. Hey, what the heck? You say, hey, this lunatic we talked to that put on the webinar said, we should have a communications process. Let's get a couple of people together and talk about how we're going to communicate. Use that perhaps as a mechanism. But and I will tell you that'd be the first method. But you're going to have that difficult conversation. If, as you have that conversation, or before you go in, don't hesitate to pick up the phone and call me, and I'll kind of coach you through some ideas to get a little bit more knowledge about the situation and give you some guidance, because I want to see you be successful. Other thoughts, comments, questions, fire them away. All right, we're probably 2/3 of the way through. We have had issues where when we use different people to share information, staff still get the last part wasn't on there. John, can you read that one for me when you the full thing, because it cut off and we still get people and then it stopped.
Yep. It says, we have had issues where when we use different people to share information and staff still get confused. I am aware it's a communication issue. I guess any advice will help.
Yeah, I think that's really comes into maybe the listening aspect of things. If you communicate things before you wrap up after your communication, let's say it's a particular member of the staff, you need to say, Joshua, I want you to replay what I've just told you because I want to make sure we're on the same wavelength. And you hear what they have to say, and then you say, well, no, I probably wasn't clear. I meant that you needed to be here the third Friday of every month. And you have them play it back. It's reflective listening, because if you do that, then you make sure that you're on the same wavelength. That seems to be what I'm hearing. And again, I will encourage you, if you're running into this sort of thing, and you need to be more specific about certain things, give me a call. I will gladly coach you through it. Absolutely, no problem there. I love getting calls. I love getting emails. Please reach out to me. Madra, thanks. I really appreciate that. Okay, well, good. You all know. You remember my crap coin, right? I moved my crap coin from pocket to pocket. Audrey, you can move your crap coin because you gave me some positive affirmation. I appreciate that. Other questions, or I will move on to the green block. What if the communication deals with language barriers? Yeah, absolutely. That is a very tricky situation, because when I was an interrogator, I oftentimes had to work through interpreter translators. You have to make sure that you have someone that you can trust, that doesn't filter what you're saying. And you have to look at, oftentimes we tend to look at the interpreter, as opposed to when the interpreter is saying something, you want to look at the individual, because you can oftentimes pick up on the fact that the person doesn't get it in body language versus they might nod their head, yes, but their body language is saying, no, I don't get this. But you have to pick someone that you trust and who will not filter your information. That's hugely important. And oftentimes with the interpreter, you need to tell the interpreter, look, tell them this is exactly what I said. Because oftentimes interpreters don't want to say give bad news. All right, other questions on communication? Otherwise, I will move on. Okay, the green block. The green block stands for growth. The comment that was made in this situation was, they have told me I'm a valuable employee, but they never offer any specifics or tell me about opportunities to grow. Growth is the most important thing. It's come up in surveys to millennials. Appreciation is kind of right behind it. But they realize that if they're growing, it's the pathway to more money, more responsibility, more interesting jobs, all those types of things. So from a growth perspective, if you are not helping your people grow, they're going to leave. I tell people, help them grow or watch them go. That's going to be the way it works. So I recommend that everybody, and I was blessed when I was 25, my boss, who I've talked about many times, Rick from American Crystal Sugar, he came to me and he said, Jeff, he said, I'm going to ask you 3 questions. Where do you see yourself going? What's it going to take to get there? And are you willing to pay the price? Those 3 questions, you should ask that of all of your people, not just your young people, but even I talk about oldsters. I mean, my wife works part-time in a hospital, but she's still looking at, okay, how can she remain engaged and vibrant? They should be asking her these five questions. They should be saying, Nancy, where do you see yourself going in the organization? I know you're retired and now you started here, but what are your aspirations? What are you thinking? Okay. How are you going to get there? Let's say my wife would want to transfer into another role within the organization, that's the supervisor has the opportunity to say, well, here's our bidding process or whatever. And I know it kills a lot of managers or supervisors to see their people go to another department. But the point is if you don't help them grow, they're going to go somewhere else. Right? Because if people want to grow and you don't have it's tougher if you're smaller. It's really tough if you're smaller. But the other piece is they start talking about it. That's the sort of mentoring that keeps people around. I mean, I stayed with Rick probably longer than I should have from a career standpoint, but I was learning so much from this guy. Even if you don't have upward possibilities, help them grow in their role. Give them more responsibility. You might not be able to change their job, but give them more responsibility. Get them involved with task forces, all those sorts of things, and keep them energized, keep them engaged, and help them grow. Because if they're looking at it and saying, my boss is a great mentor, and they're not getting that when somebody else approaches them about a job, they'll stick around. That's the key. You got to help them grow. I've heard people say, you know what? If I help them grow, they're going to leave. So wait a second. You don't want them to grow in their job? You don't want to train them in their job? So you've got untrained people. It just doesn't make sense. Train them, help them grow. If they leave, they leave. And the key is you may not keep them for 10 years. But if you can keep them, instead of them leaving in 3, you keep them for 5. That's the key. Keep them longer, and that reduces your employee turnover. I was thinking of something lost my train of thought, but from a growth perspective, now I got it. The first 6 months is the most important point from a growth perspective, because during that first 6 months, that's where the learning curve is the steepest. It's also the time frame when more people leave an organization than any other time, is that first 6 months. So your onboarding process, I call it assimilation of that person into the environment. You want to help assimilate them into the environment. You want to be asking questions. You want to be following up with them. You want to do all these things. And I would recommend that if you want to get some great information, go to my website, jeffkortes.com, and go there. And I literally have a process laid out for the first 6 months, things you need to think about in order to retain people, because that's your biggest danger period. And I will tell you, if you can button down that first 6 months, you will see your turnover probably drop by 50%. If you haven't, what you need to do, the other thing is as an organization, you need to look at your turnover and see, when are people looking. Oftentimes you say, well, we've got a yearly turnover of 15%. When is that turnover occurring? Is it occurring in the first 3 months, first 6 months, first 2 weeks, whatever it is? You have to use the data in order to focus in and determine where are you going to put your time and energy, because this stuff, it's fundamental, but it's not easy. I will tell you that. Everybody says, well, it's pretty simple. Yeah, maybe, but it's putting it all together, taking the time and energy to work it and work it hard. Then you will see results come out of this. So help people grow. You want to ask those 3 questions. I want somebody to tell me, what are the 3 questions you're going to ask? What are the 3 questions you're going to ask? Somebody put it in there. Who's been listening? What 3 questions you're going to ask somebody to help them look at their career, their growth within the organization? Come on, somebody put it in the chat box. What are the 3 questions so everybody can see it? Where do you see yourselves going? Where do you see yourselves going? How will you get there? And are you willing to pay the price? Absolutely. Thank you, Michelle. You got it. Those are the 3 questions. Your job is not to run their career. Your job is to facilitate a discussion. That's what a mentor does. Because if you facilitate the discussion, it works. I mean, and again, I stuck around a couple years longer than I probably should have, but I was gaining so much from Rick, my mentor, that it made sense for me to stay as opposed to jump to another job where I wasn't getting that sort of thing. All right. I don't even notice. If you guys were here, I'd have someone from the audience come up and start to pull the blocks up. I'm adept because I've done this a bunch of times before. But what I will tell you is the tower starts to get shaky. Let's say, for instance, you're not communicating the way you should. You're going to lose some people there. You're not growing people. You're going to lose people earlier. You're not hiring for fit. So you get the wrong fit and a bunch of people are bailing within that first 6 months. You're not training them in the first 6 months. You're not analyzing your data so you know where your problem is. All these things start to come together. And when they come together, or if they don't come together, you will continue to hemorrhage talent. Thank you for that comment. Yeah, great visual. Yeah, absolutely. Again, it's pulling it all together. That's the key. And I kind of harp on this, but you gotta pull it all together. You can't just do one thing and another thing, and it can't be a shotgun approach. You need to sit back and say, okay, what do we need to do based on what this crazy guy told us in the webinar? That's the key. And as I tell people, the best way to lay out that strategy, I've actually done this a couple ways. One is I looked at how could we solve our retention. I had a huge whiteboard, and employees could come in and put comments on it as to what they thought would help lower the employee turnover. So I got everybody in the organization involved. And then the other way I tell people is you want to sit on your back porch. Nice sunny day in Kentucky. What's the temperature down there, John? John, what's the temperature down there?
Down here today, it is actually bright and sunny, and I would say mid-60s.
Oh, mid-60s. Perfect day.
Perfect weather.
Perfect day to do when I do all my planning. I sit out on the back porch. 60s, 70s is pretty nice up here. We're going to hit a high of 73. Have a vodka tonic. It's quiet. Just start writing down your ideas. By the 3rd vodka tonic, you will get very creative. Trust me. It works. Again, get in some quiet. Think about what we've talked about today and start laying out your strategy. That's key. And I will tell you, after you start to lay out your strategy, if you do have questions, pick up the phone and call me. I make this offer to people, and it just drives me wild that more people don't call than I would like to call. So again, communication strategy. First 6 month strategy. Overall strategy. Put it all together and you will start to see you will get phenomenal results. All right. The next block is visibility. I don't know. I did it. And I don't know if you notice, the bottom block, there's only 2 blocks. I'm not the brightest bulb in the pack, but I realized that if I pull out any one of those, the tower is going to fall down. And I'll explain why when we get to that point. But the red block is visibility. And what this guy said is, I tried to recruit him out of the organization. And he said, he says, I would have thought about it before, but he says, we've got a new department manager, and we've seen more of the new department manager in 5 weeks than we did of the old one in 5 years. That says something right about the person that they have in the role now. And I wasn't able to draw that person out of the organization and recruit them for my client. Remember, I use this one, so I'm not going to go through it again. I talked about the fact that visibility drives communication. Communication drives trust, and trust drives loyalty. Write this one down. I was so pleased. I was talking with an organization where I'd spoken before, and the guy said to me, he says, the guy was a wood carver. He actually carved a plaque that said, visibility drives communication, communication drives trust, and trust drives loyalty. That was so awesome for me. And because if you're visible, you're communicating. If you're visible, you're seeing whether or not people are performing the way they should. If there's a problem, there's something that you have to address. If you're visible, you're out there giving people crap, caring, respect, appreciation, and praise. You're driving that 5-to-1 ratio you need to drive. So visibility is hugely important in this process. And I would urge you, if you are not getting out of your office, wandering around at least once a day for a half an hour, you need to start. I cannot emphasize that enough. Visibility is huge. I work with one organization, the president of the company, he makes it a point. This is the president. I mean, he's, it's a big organization of about 350 people. And what he does, morning and afternoon, he is out there, he is wandering around in the organization, talking to people. It goes to some of the things that folks said earlier, hey, how you doing? The guy knows everybody. I mean, he's been there a long time, but he makes it a point to get to know all the newbies that come on board and introduce himself and do all those things. So people feel a part of the organization. It's a sense of community. And because what you want is when your employee is talking to somebody else and you're talking about work, say, hey, I talk to my boss every day. Or I talk to the manager every day or every week, and he cares about me. He knows what my kids do as far as like the ballet or the wrestling team or baseball or basketball, whatever it is. Or if they're if they're into the fine arts, it doesn't matter. If you get to know people, they become people as opposed to being just employees. And visibility is one of the best ways in order for that to happen. Because if you aren't visible, it's not going to work. So if you are not getting out of your office, start to get out of your office and do the things that you need to do. All right. The last block stands for the quality of your first line and middle level leaders. Got directors on the line. I hate to say it, you don't drive employee retention like that first line supervisor and a manager. People that are in direct contact with those people. So this stands for the quality of that first line leadership and manager, because 75% of the people in this country say that the worst thing about their job is, answer it in the chat box. 75% of the people in this country say the worst thing about their job is their boss. Michelle, yeah, the leadership. Ashley said that, yeah, the leadership, their boss. Absolutely. I mean, because you directors, the vast majority of the people work for supervisors and managers. They don't work for the director. It's just the way it is. So to employees, their immediate boss is the company in a lot of cases. And if they've got a boss who doesn't know what they're doing, doesn't do the things that they should do as a leader, they're going to say this organization is not very good. They're going to draw that conclusion. And that's the last thing you want. And as part of my process, you all know, I hope you've got it. The Great Boss Checklist. I want you to take 2-3 minutes and work through the Great Boss Checklist. I do this every time because I encourage you, those areas that you check no, you're going to start working on them starting tomorrow. So go ahead and work through the Great Boss Checklist. You should all have that. Okay, John just put it up on the Google Drive, so you can pull it down and look at it right now. When in doubt, you are going to check no. Don't overthink it. Work quickly. Boom, 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 boom. Just work through these, because if you're overthinking it, if you're starting to overthink it, and you're not sure, it is a no. I give you another 45 seconds to a minute. So again, work through this quickly. All right. What I want you to do, starting tomorrow, say, for instance, you check no where it says, do you avoid micromanaging your people? And you check no. Start working on that one tomorrow. Then on a Monday morning, let's say you check no for, do you regularly take a stroll through your area just to talk to people? If you're not doing that, next Monday, start working on that one. Following Monday, another one. Following Monday, another one. And then after you've gone through all of them, I want you to go back. I want you to retake it. Because sometimes you slide back in other areas where you thought you had things all buttoned down. I want to encourage you. I'll take any last questions before I wrap up. But I want to encourage you, if you're really into this employee retention stuff like I am, you can tell it's amazing what amuses some people, but I love this stuff. I mean, I'm passionate about it. Matter of fact, I put out 4 postings a week on LinkedIn, and all I talk about is employee retention. So if you go on LinkedIn and you know, and you follow me, you'll see all this stuff that I come out with, because I just keep things I hear. I talk about real things that I hear in organizations and what they could have done differently. Go in, follow me, and start gathering a body of knowledge so that you can truly drive employee retention in your organization. Last minute questions. Go ahead and fire away, and then I will close. Okay, I will ask you this. Type in some things that you're going to do differently as a result of what you learned today. Type some into the chat box. I want to hear what you're going to do differently. Everybody's going to do something differently, so I want to see a bunch of them. Go ahead, type them into the chat box. What are you going to do differently? Work on giving positivity more often to other employees. All right, thanks, Audra. Come on, somebody else. What else are you going to do? More positive mindset. Absolutely. Talk to HR about implementing a personality test. And again, if you have any questions or your HR leader wants to talk with me, don't hesitate to have them reach out. What else we got? Meet with staff to discuss their careers. Absolutely. 3 questions. Develop a flexibility task force. That, like I said, that's a big one. What else? Two more. I want 2 more. I refuse to go until I see 2 more. Deal with non-performers. And again, if as you're working through that, you have questions, reach out to me. I'll be more than happy to give you some guidance. 1 more. Come on, 1 more. Randy, my producer, who's normally here, is better at doing this than I am. Have an uncomfortable conversation with the boss. Yeah. Heather, again, if you want to talk about that before you do, give me a call. Give my staff crap. Absolutely. Well, I appreciate your time and willingness to get involved, get off the bench and into the game. And what I want to emphasize to you is you got to start to put it all together. Communication, growth, visibility, flexibility, dealing with non-performers, crap. And again, remember, crap, caring, respect, appreciation, and praise is the linchpin. If you're not doing that, you are going to lose people. Hire for fit. As I tell people, don't be a twit, hire for fit. All of these things, it's time to start putting it together. Because right now, I will tell you, you are in a war. And it's about survival. Because in the next 10 years, this problem is not going away. And if you can't find and keep talent, and I tell organizations, focus on keeping talent first, and then really worry about your recruitment efforts, because otherwise you're going to recruit people and you're just going to churn them out of the organization. This is a matter of survival for virtually every organization in the country. You have to focus on it. You have to pull it all together. You have to get your strategy together. And as my boss, Rick, used to say, you have to come up with a plan. And then he always said, plan the work and work the plan. If you work a process, I will guarantee you the process is going to work for you. I'm Jeff Kortes. Thank you very much. Reach out if you need to ask me more questions or there's something you didn't want to ask here. Thanks very much. Appreciate it. I'll hang around in case there's some other questions.
Jeff, that's fantastic. Thank you so very much for making time to join us today.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
I am going to share my screen real quick because that has your contact information on it. So folks can see it right there, Jeff at jeffkortes.com and then jeffkortes.com. So if you need to reach out to Jeff, feel free to use those. Otherwise, you can be in touch with us at KHSA, and we'll be more than happy to connect you with Jeff. So Jeff, thank you so much. This has been a wonderful conversation, and we look forward to having you back with us again.
Thank you all. Take care.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.